A quick one on the online safety bill. I would say, as a preface, in an age where facts are hate speech, then speaking truth is an arrestable offence. And believe me, I should know. Point one is that whatever the government calls something, it's usually a misnomer. So if you're being sold something called the online safety bill to make you think that the world will become safer, that's usually just a badging in order to sell something that isn't quite as kind or well-meaning. So for this bill, the online safety bill, what I actually read is the ultimate policing of speech at every level, at every conversation, in the privacy of your own home. All the speech that comes out of your mouth or is typed or printed or recorded is and will be policed and can be used against you. The second thing that I think is really important is the talking heads that are put out. If you listen, they'll keep sort of throwing out stuff that you would agree with. I would agree with. Of course, none of us want our children to be hurt. We don't want anyone to be abusing children. We don't want children to see things that might be abusive to them or harmful to them. We don't want people preying on our children online. Of course not. And that's what the talking heads will say. This bill is all about protecting children from abusers online. And you'll think, oh yes, well, I don't want that to happen to my child either. But of course, that isn't what this bill does, because behind those talking points, this bill is the most loosely worded. If you could imagine, for example, a massive bowl that could catch everything, that's what this bill does. It's not detailed. It's not tailored down. There's no specifics. Essentially, if anything you say, write or type or think is projected and a powerful organisation wants to silence you or lock you up or prosecute you, this bill enables all of that. It's just a big catch-all for that. And I will give some specific examples, because otherwise some fact checker somewhere will say that I'm spreading disinformation, whereas actually I'm reading facts from the pages of the bill itself. The first thing is that it is just so broad. This bill is huge, as I was just explaining. If you wanted to do a huge catch-all basin, it absolutely does that. It talks about users to users, so you talking to someone else, maybe on an app or whatever, and the search function. So it's basically everywhere where there is speech of any kind online that is policeable now, and then punishable if it's seen to infringe other things that are totally loosey-goosey as well. People's every private communication can and will be policed. The second thing is this definition stuff. So the looser you make a definition, the easier it is to find someone guilty of infringing it, because it's essentially anything someone wants it to be. And I have been at the harsh receiving end of this for a long time. I tell people when they say, oh, what did you do wrong? You say, look, you cannot rationalise with the irrational. We live in irrational times. There are irrational rules being made. No one follows a rule because it's all just irrational. They just make up what they want to happen. So the definition here is types of legal but harmful content. That's a key phrase for you out of this whole bill. Legal but harmful. So it's legal, but someone else can define it as harmful, which means you can't argue back. You're in no position to know what someone's defining as harmful, because they can pretty much make that definition up for themselves. Then get this, content that's harmful to adults is content so designated by the Secretary of State that they have reasonable grounds to believe the nature of the content is such that there is a risk of having or indirectly having significant adverse psychological or physical impact on ordinary sensibilities. In every single one of those definitions, there is huge flux, huge fluidity. It's designated by the Secretary of State, so she can or he can designate what they want. Reasonable grounds. Well, they can always argue reasonable grounds. They just decide that those are reasonable. To believe, so they only have to believe it. And I've been caught out under new law written just for me that used this exact tool. You perceive something, and if you perceive it, you don't have to prove it. It's good enough. That's libel law right now in the UK, courtesy of me. and they could be harmed indirectly, perceive, believe indirectly. I mean, it's a minefield of nothingness that means you are guilty every time when someone decides that is the case. And the issues go on. The sanctions are disproportionate. They can apply any kind of sanction to any kind of these. Once they've decided, you're guilty of something, basically all they have to do is backfit it and find it. And there is absolutely no protection for freedom of expression or freedom of speech. They only have to have regard. So this is the duty in clause 12. They merely have to have regard for the importance of freedom of expression. Oh yes, I had regard for that, but I believe that this person has infringed what is legal but harmful. You see, there's just no win for any of us. This is going to be just glorious for the lawyers who are paid by activists and NGOs and powerful bodies in order to take certain people down. Russell Brand, as an example. And then in addition to all of this, there's a tiered system so that formal news organisations and broadcasters, so not me, are protected in some degree from this bill. But citizen journalists, so ordinary people who used to work for mainstream but got thrown out because they wouldn't toe the line, we can be policed absolutely by this bill. We're not protected at all. Citizen journalists, bloggers, people they can't control can absolutely be got at by this bill and removed and silenced, which, if you take Canada's example, Canada pays funding to all the major news organisations, so it controls the messaging that goes out because it provides funds to them. And you can see that happening here as well. It's basically a massive, massive hodgepodge of disasters that essentially say whatever you say, speak or think can be policed and you can be punished for it. And that is called the Online Safety Bill. And I think it just all fits with what I've said for a very, very, very long time, which is that we live in an age of prohibition, where speech is the new alcohol. And it's the reason people like me are gathering at speakeasies up and down the country, often in secret and in private. And I can only see that trend continuing as we look to speak freely together. So anyway, that's my summary of the reality of the Online Safety Bill. And I'll go and pack my bag and let you know my prison number when I get it.